In the Ardennes, the case did not begin with a confession. It began with a strip of white cloth, frozen stiff to the sleeve of an American medic. December 1944. The Battle of the Bulge had turned the Belgian forest into a maze of ice, smoke, broken roads, and men who could no longer feel their hands. Private First Class Daniel Lane was an aide man with an infantry regiment that had been taking casualties for weeks. He carried bandages, morphine syrettes, scissors, sulfa powder, and a roll of field dressings that never seemed to last long enough. He did not carry a rifle. On his left arm, over his wool coat, he wore the Red Cross. That was supposed to mean something. Near a small road junction west of Wiltz, Lane's forward aid room was overrun before sunrise. The Germans came in fast, boots in the hallway, men shouting in 2 languages. A table overturned, a wounded rifleman trying to sit up and being shoved back down by a guard. The Americans inside were searched and pushed into the yard. Lane was pulled out separately, not because he had a map, not because he had fired a shot, because the white armband made him useful. An SS lieutenant named Erich Vollmer wanted American positions. He wanted roadblocks, gun lines, and which units were still holding the ridge. Lane knew pieces of it. He said nothing. 3 American prisoners were locked in the granary across the lane. They saw enough through a cracked board in the wall to understand exactly what Vollmer was doing. They could not reach Lane. They could not warn him. They could only watch. And later, when investigators asked them separately what they had seen, all 3 men gave the same answer in the same order. It was not battle confusion. It was not a misunderstanding in fog and snow. It was deliberate. 2 days later, an American patrol found Lane in the loft of a ruined barn, barely conscious, curled in old straw, his boots frozen hard and his lips too cracked to speak. The patrol sergeant saw the armband first. It was still on Lane's sleeve, so he wrote it down. Red Cross marking visible and intact. That sentence would become one of the most important lines in the file. The report moved through the chain the way reports move in war, from the patrol leader to battalion, to regiment, to division, then into a cold command post where exhausted officers were trying to stop the largest German attack the Western Allies had faced since D-Day. The senior commander who read it had every reason to put it aside. Bastogne was under pressure. Roads were clogged with tanks, ambulances, artillery, and men walking east because there were no trucks left for them. Every hour brought a new map, a new breakthrough, a new request for fuel, ammunition, or graves registration. A single wounded medic could have disappeared inside the machinery of a massive battle. But the general did not let him disappear. He read the patrol report twice. Then he sent for the judge advocate officer. Not tomorrow. Not after the line stabilized that afternoon. The order was precise. Open a war crimes file under Vollmer's name. Locate his unit. Find every American witness who had been held near the aid room. Get their statements under oath. Enter Lane's medical report into evidence. Preserve the patrol sergeant's original note. And mark the armband as a protected medical sign, not as a uniform detail. When the legal officer warned that finding one SS lieutenant in the middle of a moving German offensive would not be quick, the general did not argue. He said, "Then build the file before we have the man." That was the decision. Not revenge first, not rumor first, evidence first. Because the general understood something that mattered. If the enemy could break the rules of war against a medic and leave no paper trail behind, then the crime would vanish the moment the snow covered the ground. So he made the paper trail before the snow could do it. For the next 3 weeks, the war kept moving. Men froze in foxholes, tanks slid off narrow roads, field hospitals overflowed. Medics worked by flashlight under blankets so the light would not draw shell fire. And in the middle of it, a thin file with Vollmer's name on the cover kept growing. The first witness was a corporal from Pennsylvania who had been locked in the granary. He told the investigators he remembered Lane's face more than anything else. Not fear, not anger, just the look of a man trying not to give another man the satisfaction of seeing him break. The second witness was a radio operator whose hands shook so badly during the statement that the clerk had to stop twice and wait. He kept repeating one detail. The armband never came off. The third witness was a wounded rifleman who had been treated by Lane earlier that same morning. He said Lane had dressed his leg before the Germans arrived. Even though Lane had been ordered to move back with the aid station, he stayed because there were men who could not walk. That mattered too. It proved he had been acting as a medic before the capture, during the capture, and after the line collapsed around him. The medical report was worse than the statements. It did not use dramatic language. Army doctors rarely did. It listed temperature, pulse, exposure, bruising, dehydration, tissue damage, and shock. It recorded that Lane could not give a full statement when found. It recorded that the Red Cross armband remained attached to his left sleeve. No adjectives, no outrage, just facts. That was what made it powerful. By mid-January, the American line was no longer bending backward. The German push was running out of fuel, time, and men. The general asked for the Vollmer file again. The answer came back. Witnesses located, statements pending completion, medical record entered, suspect not yet captured. He nodded and sent the file back. A week later, he asked again. Same answer. The third time he asked, an aide finally said the name had not been forgotten. The general looked at him and said, I am making sure of that. In February, as the German retreat began to pull apart, Vollmer's name surfaced in a prisoner cage outside Spa. At first it was only a match on rank and unit, then a captured company roster confirmed it. Then 2 German prisoners identified him. The legal officer received the message just after dark. Vollmer was alive. Vollmer was in American hands, and the file was already waiting. The order back to the prisoner enclosure was simple. Hold him separately. Do not process him through the ordinary intake line. Notify the judge-advocate section. Do not discuss the evidence with him. From that point forward, the case moved like a case, not like a battlefield rumor. Vollmer was interrogated by legal officers, not by angry soldiers. The witnesses were re-interviewed, each one separately. The patrol sergeant's notebook was copied and sealed. Lane's armband was photographed where it had been found, still stained, still stiff in places. The red cross faded at the edge where snow and dirt had cut into the fabric. The general did not attend the interrogation. He did not need to. His presence would only give the defense something to point at later. Pressure, influence, command anger. So he stayed away from the room where Vollmer sat. But he did not stay away from Lane. By then, Lane had been moved through a field hospital in France and on to a military hospital in England. He had been there for more than a month. The worst injuries were healing, but the rest of him had not caught up. Men in that ward recognized generals by the sound of boots stopping too suddenly. Lane looked up and saw the commander beside his bed, coat still damp from the weather. No speech prepared, no photographers, no decoration ceremony. Just a tired general standing beside a wounded medic. For a moment, neither man said anything. Then the general told him Vollmer had been captured. He told him the file was complete. He told him 3 witnesses had given sworn statements. The medical record had been entered, and the patrol sergeant's note had been preserved. Lane listened without moving much. Then the general said the thing Lane would remember for the rest of his life. "You were still wearing it." Lane blinked. The general pointed toward his left arm, where the sleeve lay folded back above the bandages. "The armband. When they found you, it was still there." Lane said he had not thought about it. He had not made some heroic decision. He had simply never taken it off. The general leaned closer. "That is exactly why it matters." He told Lane that the enemy had tried to make the armband meaningless, tried to turn it into a piece of cloth, tried to prove that the rules only counted when they were convenient. "But you kept wearing it," he said, "and as long as it was on your arm, it said there was still a line between what you were doing and what he was doing." Lane did not answer right away. He looked toward the window. Outside, hospital trucks were moving through a wet English morning. Inside, the general stood waiting. Finally, Lane asked whether the case would hold. The general said, "It will hold because you did." The tribunal convened in the spring of 1945, after Germany was already collapsing, but before anyone had time to pretend the small crimes did not matter beside the large ones. Vollmer's defense was familiar. The Ardennes had been chaos. The front had moved too fast. Units were cut off. Orders were unclear. Men made decisions under pressure. The laws of war, the defense argued, could not be judged cleanly from a desk after the battle was over. The judges listened. Then they looked at the evidence. 3 American prisoners, questioned separately, described the same sequence. The patrol report documented Lane's condition and the armband. The medical record matched the witness statements. Lane himself testified in a voice so low the court reporter twice asked him to repeat his answers. He did not dramatize it. He did not decorate it. He said what happened. He said what Vollmer wanted. He said what he refused to give. And when they asked about the armband, Lane looked down at his own hands and said, "It was what I was." That line ended the room for a moment, because the case had never been only about one wounded man. It was about whether the symbol on his sleeve had any meaning when it became inconvenient for the enemy to respect it. It was about whether a medic without a rifle was still protected when the snow was falling, the roads were breaking, and nobody important was watching. It was about whether the rules survived in the exact moment when breaking them would be easier. The tribunal rejected the defense. Vollmer was convicted of violating the protections owed to medical personnel and of conduct constituting a war crime. The sentence was death. It was carried out that summer. No crowd, no speech, no victory parade. Just a legal record that said the line had been crossed, and that somebody had made sure the crossing was not erased. Lane returned home to Indiana after the war. He did not become the kind of veteran who turned every conversation toward Europe. He trained as a nurse's aide first, then as a hospital orderly, and later worked in a county clinic where almost nobody knew the full story. People knew he was patient. They knew he hated wasted bandages. They knew he could calm frightened boys before stitches and old men before amputations. They did not know that he had once been found in a Belgian barn with the Red Cross still frozen to his sleeve. For 30 years, the armband stayed in the bottom drawer of his dresser, folded once, then folded again, wrapped in a handkerchief. His daughter saw it twice when she was young and learned not to ask. Not because her father was angry, because something in the way he closed the drawer told her the question would be too heavy. He did talk about the war sometimes, small pieces, a road near a village whose name he never pronounced the same way twice, a boy from Ohio who sang when he was scared, a chaplain who gave away his gloves and then lied about being warm. But he almost never talked about the granary, the barn, or the tribunal. What he talked about years later was the hospital visit, the general standing beside his bed, the line about the armband. His daughter remembered that part because her father's voice changed when he said it. Not louder, softer, as if he still did not quite believe somebody had noticed. After Lane died, she opened the dresser drawer and found the handkerchief. Inside was the armband. The white cloth had yellowed. The red cross had faded at one corner. A faint crease ran through the center where it had been folded the same way for decades. She did not send it to a museum, not at first. She kept it in the family house because she said it was not only evidence of what had been done to him, it was evidence of what had not been taken from him. The Germans had taken the aid room. They had taken his boots, his strength, his safety, and almost his life. But they had not taken the meaning of the cloth on his arm. And years later, when the paper file was boxed away and the witnesses were gone, that small white band still said what the court had said in its colder language. A medic had kept his side of the line, and the army he served made sure the other side answered for crossing it.